So with that, we will hand over to Malcolm, who's now Director of Legal and Policy, who will talk about launch a member consultation on changes to MoU and Articles.
Thank you. And normally I would be delighted to have an extra 8 minutes for one of my presentations, but in this occasion, I don't think I'm going to need it. This is the launch of a formal member consultation on changes to the articles. Hopefully that's on the screen for you now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so we like to, wherever possible, launch, if we're planning making changes to the articles or the MoU, to launch a consultation on that at one LINX meeting so that it can be approved at the following meeting. And that's what we're doing again this time. These changes on this occasion are relatively minor and straightforward technical corrections rather than anything that I think you will think of as a substantial change to our governance processes. So there's two things that we're doing. One is a change to the articles and one is a change to the MoU. The articles, the first is the changes to specify the chair of the general meeting and to authorize the chair to make temporary adjournments to the general meeting. And the MoU change is to clarify text relating to termination of membership and to enable the board to lift a suspension of a membership temporarily and then to reimpose it later if necessary. So to go into these in more detail, the chair of the meeting, as a matter of recent practice, and by recent here I mean for many years, the chairman of the board has always acted as the chair of the general meeting, the annual general meeting, the EGM. When he's been absent, that role has usually been performed by a NED, usually the one who's the vice chairman or deputy chairman. But actually the chair of the board and the chair of the general meeting are technically, legally speaking, separate roles. And we've discovered that the articles don't actually say who should be chair of the general meeting, which is a bit of a problem because we need to have some mechanism to appoint them, the chair of the general meeting. And you can't really do things without notice during the meeting itself. So the solution that we propose is to amend the articles to state that the chair of the board shall be the chair of the general meeting, as normally happens in practice, provided that the chair is available and willing, and that if the chair of the board is not available or willing, then the directors present shall decide who that should be, which would presumably be a director that was available. So that's hopefully not something very substantial. This one even more simple. As a matter of good practice, articles ought to provide the chair with the power to temporarily adjourn a general meeting if it's interrupted in mid-flow. Now, because our general meetings are actually technically very short, this hasn't normally been an issue in the past, but as a matter of good practice, if the fire alarm went off or if there were some disruption, even some malicious disruption to the meeting, the chair would want to be able to adjourn the meeting while that was resolved and then recall the meeting later. So the proposal is to just simply write that into the articles that the chair has that power. To make sure that that doesn't get used in a way that meant that people weren't aware that the meeting was resuming, we'll also limit the length that an adjournment can last without requiring us to send out a new calling notice for a general meeting. Now, MoU changes. So the MoU provides a mechanism for members to be suspended and then, which normally happens, I mean, members that get suspended for breach of the MoU, overwhelmingly, the reason that the type of breach that is non-payment. The MoU provides that they will be terminated automatically at the end of the next general meeting if the members don't positively vote not to terminate them. In order for us to do that, we have to send out a list. The MoU requires us to send out a list of the suspended members with the calling notice, and then those members are the ones who are liable for termination at the end of the general meeting. and that's a protection for members. But we found that because we've put that, we send that list out of these are the people who will be terminated at the end of the meeting. If the board actually think that the company is able to resolve the issue with a member, essentially in practice, the member is actually saying they're going to pay up, then because the notice has actually gone out saying that they're going to be terminated, it's not clear that we actually have the power to remove them from that list. And that's not good, because then you would have a situation where it wasn't clear whether somebody had actually automatically been terminated by operation of the rules, when that wasn't the intent at all. Our solution is to tidy up the wording a little and to say explicitly that the board has a more flexible power to lift the suspension if it believes that a breach has been remedied or will be remedied, and if it hasn't been remedied, to reimpose that suspension if it never materializes. And that will ensure that people don't automatically get terminated, and we will also clarify the wording that says that the termination of suspended members only applies to those who are suspended at the time of the general meeting, provided that notice has been given, and make sure it doesn't apply to all who were suspended and listed on the notice of who was suspended at the time that that went out. So if after the notice goes out, the board have unsuspended somebody, has lifted a suspension, then they won't be terminated automatically. That's the idea. Hopefully that's clear. We've got I've written a full consultation paper on that, which you can see at the address listed, which is includes the full text of how this is to be implemented, and in line with requests from members on previous consultations, I've also at the same address, you can download a copy of the articles and a copy of the MoU as they would look with the new wording in place, with that wording redlined, so that you can see it standing out for you, so that you see how it will look in situ. So hopefully that will provide you with what you need to know in terms of the details. But if anybody has any questions about the proposals now would be a good time to ask about anything you might wish to ask.
Wonderful, thank you, Malcolm. There is a question from Steve Wright, so I'll read it out to you. Shouldn't it be a resolution per member that is being suspended? You can then pull the resolution should the situation change. Likewise, what if the member wanted to not have a specific member terminated?
Okay, because the almost invariably people are who are being terminated are being terminated for non-payment. The members we have previously got put in place a provision in the MoU that there does not need to be a resolution to terminate members. That saves members from having to vote individually on such things, because this is essentially a routine matter. So instead, what it says, because these are routine terminations for non-payment in most cases, there are not normally resolutions that are put and voted on individually. Instead, the protection is that they're listed in the calling notice, and then there needs to be a positive resolution not to terminate that member. And that's really the answer to that question. We don't have such resolutions because that would create essentially a lot of voting on a routine matter, which is essentially a credit control matter most of the time. And we just want to ensure that we're not trapped by that automatic procedure into terminating somebody that we actually have resolved the issue with.
Thanks for that. We do have a few more minutes if anyone wants to ask any other clarifying questions to Malcolm.
I see that Steve's question actually had a second part. He also asked, likewise, what if the members wanted to not have a specific member terminated? And that's and the answer to that is that there is a provision in the articles that if there is a positive vote by members not to terminate, then that member will not be terminated automatically or indeed at all at that meeting. And that would require a member resolution not to terminate. That's already in place in the MoU, and we're not touching that. We're leaving that in place.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Malcolm.